Before dawn, the river breathes. It exhales mist that clings to reeds and stones, a pale veil that turns sound into something soft and intimate. From the bank, the water looks still, but beneath the skin of reflected stars it is already working, shouldering silt downstream, combing memory from mountain to sea. Rivers are the original storytellers. They do not speak in sentences, yet everything they touch becomes a record. The scratch on a pebble, the bend of a willow, the footfall of an animal that drank and moved on. To follow a river from its first cold syllable to its salt-stung ending is to read a biography written in current and gravity. The river begins as a rumor high in the range, where winter lingers like a held breath. Snowfields are archives here, storing seasons in white layers, each crystal a small decision of wind and temperature. When the sun returns with intent, the surface loosens, then collapses into a quiet chaos of meltwater. It gathers itself in rivulets that stitch the slope, whispering together until the whisper becomes a voice. The first trickle is shy, but it has a destination already chosen by the tilt of the world. Gravity does not negotiate, it invites. Above the tree line, life is spare and ingenious. Lichens paint the rock in maps of orange and mint, slow alchemists turning stone into soil. A ptarmigan lifts on sudden wings, white feathers flashing against shadow, then disappears again, a living punctuation mark. Here the river is so young it can be stepped across, its chill sharp as a blade. Touching it stings the skin and wakes the mind. This water has not yet learned patience. It rushes because it must. Downslope, the rumor becomes a presence. Snowmelt meets springs that seep from fractures, water long hidden in darkness emerging with a sigh. The channel deepens, braids, argues with boulders and loses. Sound arrives before sight. A clean, relentless music that drowns the pulse in your ears. This is where the river learns its first lessons in force and flexibility. It slams and slides, breaks and curves, always choosing the path that costs the least energy in the long run. Engineers call it optimization. The river calls it survival. Forest takes over the story. Conifers crowd the banks, their roots clawing into gravel for purchase, their needles sifting light into green arithmetic. Fallen logs become bridges and dams and sanctuaries for insects. The river cools beneath the shade, its temperature a precise message carried downstream. Salmon, miles away in the sea, will one day read that message with bodies tuned to chemical whispers older than maps. For now, trout hold in eddies behind stones, saving energy, darting for mayflies that skate the surface like brief ideas. People arrive quietly in this chapter, as they have for tens of thousands of years. The evidence is subtle. A flake of obsidian near a bend, sharp as intent, a fire scar on a pine healed into a dark oval, a footpath that follows the bank not because it is easy, but because it is right. Rivers teach humans where to walk. Camps appear where the bank widens and the water slows, where fish can be taken without emptying tomorrow. Names are given that describe not ownership but relationship. The place where the elk cross, the water that sings at night, the bend shaped like a sleeping dog. As elevation falls, the river broadens its vocabulary. Tributaries join with their own accents, cold from the north-facing cirque, warm from sunlit slopes, mineral-rich from limestone. Each confluence is a negotiation. Colors meet and hesitate, then blend. Silt adds its sentences, turning clarity into milk and then back again after storms. Floodplains appear, wide as generosity, accepting overflow with grasses that bend and return. These flats are libraries of resilience. Flood resets them, rearranges shelves, but the stories endure. In spring, the river forgets itself and remembers everything at once. Snowmelt surges, rain stacks upon it, and the banks lose their careful edges. Water climbs into fields and forests, lifts logs like toys, redraws the map. To stand here is to feel small in the presence of a power that is not cruel, only thorough. Floods are not disasters in the river's mind, they are edits. They prune and fertilize, deposit the future in the form of fine, dark soil. When the water retreats, it leaves behind abundance disguised as mess. The animals know the schedule better than any calendar. Frogs time their chorus to the warming shallows. Birds nest high enough to survive the first rise. Deer cross at traditional fords, hooves splashing, ears flicking. Bears arrive with the first runs of fish, their patience honed by hunger. They stand in the current, muscles coiled, eyes reading the water's grammar. A silver body arcs, jaws close, and energy leaps from river to fur. On the bank, the remains feed ravens, beetles, moss. Nothing is wasted. The river writes a circular sentence and reads it aloud every year. Human cities grow where the river calms enough to be trusted, or where it can be persuaded to behave. Stone embankments narrow the channel, speeding the flow. Dams interrupt the conversation between mountain and sea, storing water for fields and light for nights. From above, reservoirs look serene, blue eyes in a dry face. Below, the river changes tone. Temperature shifts, sediment starves, timing breaks. Fish hesitate where they once rushed. The story grows complicated, yet even here, the river teaches adaptation. Fish ladders mimic cascades with mixed success. Managed floods attempt to stand in for chaos. Wetlands are restored like apologies, sponges sewn back into the landscape. People argue about rights and needs, about kilowatts and crops, about what a river is for. The river keeps moving. It accepts the walls, then undermines them grain by grain. Time is its ally. Farther downstream, the valley opens. Agriculture spreads like a patchwork quilt stitched by canals. The river's water becomes food. Rice paddies shimmering with sky, orchards heavy with promise, wheat nodding in agreement with the wind. Soil here is a gift from upstream, ground rock delivered patiently over millennia. Farmers read the river's moods in the color of leaves and the taste of dust. Too much water rots roots, too little breaks hearts. The balance is delicate and never finished. In the heat of summer, the river slows and warms. Children leap from banks into brown-green relief, surfacing with laughter and silt-smeared faces. Fishermen cast at dusk, lines whispering through air scented with cut grass. The water carries the smell of life, algae, mud, sweetness, and the memory of storms not yet arrived. At night, the river reflects the stars again, but now they are joined by lights of towns that lean close, trusting the bank to hold. Every river collects ghosts. Old ferries rust in backwaters, their roots replaced by bridges. Mill wheels lie half-buried, teeth gone, ambitions dissolved. Songs mention crossings that no longer exist. Languages keep the river alive even when maps change. The names persist, braided like channels, ancient syllables under newer ones, both pointing to the same moving thing. Where the land flattens into delta, the river begins to hesitate. It splits into fingers, each reaching for the sea with cautious hope. Sediment drops out of suspension, building islands that migrate like thoughts. Reeds hiss in the wind. Birds crowd the margins in numbers that feel extravagant. Egrets precise as punctuation, pelicans working cooperatively, terns sowing the air with sharp cries. The delta is a nursery, a generosity engine, turning river into abundance before surrender. But deltas are fragile paragraphs. Starve them of sediment upstream and they sink. Hold back floods and salt creeps inland, burning roots. Raise the sea and the equation changes again. Here, the argument between human timelines and geological ones is sharp. Levees promise safety and deliver it, briefly. The river presses. Storms arrive with new force. The future is negotiated tide by tide. At last, the river meets the sea. The meeting is not an ending but a transformation. Fresh water floats atop salt for a time, a lens that bends light and life. Plankton bloom in the mixing zone, feeding fish that feed birds that feed stories. The river's memory disperses into currents that circle the globe, carrying mountain whispers to distant shores. Snow that fell in silence now moves in waves that slap hulls and carve cliffs. The biography continues, just written in a different hand. Standing at the mouth, you can taste the argument, fresh and salt, soft and sharp. The horizon is wide enough to make personal worries small. The river has spent itself and become something else, and yet it has lost nothing. Its work is visible everywhere: sandbars, fisheries, cultures that face the water and wait. To understand a river is to understand that nothing is ever truly still, that connection is the oldest law, that patience can shape stone. In a warming world, rivers are messengers bearing uncomfortable truths. Glaciers shrink, altering the first chapter. Snow falls as rain, changing the timing of sentences downstream. Floods grow more sudden, droughts more severe. The river's voice rises and cracks. It tells us that balance is not a fixed state but a practice, that listening is as important as building, that humility is a form of intelligence. Yet hope runs with the current. Where floodplains are given back their space, fish return. Where forests are allowed to shade banks, water cools. Where cities turn toward the river instead of away, treating it as a partner rather than a problem, new stories begin. Children learn the names of birds again. Even dams, reimagined or removed, can become commas instead of periods. If you follow the river back in your mind, from sea to source, you can feel the pull of gravity reversed by memory. You can imagine snow thickening on high ridges, storing tomorrow. You can hear the first trickle practicing its name. The river is not just water moving downhill. It is time made visible, a teacher with endless patience, a story that writes us as much as we write it.